Ooh, hello. Hello. Hello,
Hey,
sister.
hey, hey.
Ooh, hi, everyone. We have a very special guest that we are so excited to introduce you to today. And I'm diving straight in because, y'all, we got lots to talk about. And as you know, if you're listening in, when we have guests on, we do try and enjoy to break them into two parts. So, right now, you are hearing part one, and there will be a part two. So, you can tune in next week for that. But who is this guest? Well, let me introduce her to you. Melissa Bauknight is who we are sitting down with today. She is all things community. So if you are like, community, I want to feel safe in community, I want to self-trust myself, how can I take my mask down in community? This woman, in my experience, is the most beautiful embodiment of the word community. She also is a mom. She's an entrepreneur. She's a business alignment coach. She is the founder of the Nova Global community. And we're going to really open up dialogue around all of these things, all of the journey that's led you to the here and now. So, hello, sister. Hi.
Hi. I don't even know what you said, but I was like already tearing up. I'm like, well, we're
Oh,
going in already. It's good.
oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's how I see you in the
It's good
world.
to be seen.
Mhm.
It is. It is. It is indeed. Well, let's roll in that and the embodiment of community and how what's the key the key thing that you think has supported you in softening and unmasking yourself in community? And I mean, gosh, hello on podcasts, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't used to want to be seen, or maybe I wanted to be seen, but I was afraid of it. And I didn't know that. I just knew that I was anxious. And I didn't even know that that was the word for it for a long time. I like to meet people where they are. And a lot of the things that I know to be true for me now, I had no words for back when I started this journey. And I dove in about a decade ago to a real personal exploration, which has morphed into a lot of different things. Um, and the number one thing that changed my life was finding communities. I did do some that were women and men or co-ed or, not just predominantly women, but mostly women communities that felt a certain way or had certain values that allowed me to start to tap into some of the places that held shame, that had me feel anxious, that had me want to mask, that had me want to hide, that had me not realize my power and my voice. And in doing that, I became, I would say, just me. I became me, but I became a more clear version of me and a more self-expressed version of me. And so I'm excited to dive into community today because I believe, obviously I feel like it's my life's work to create community. I believe in it with my whole body. And I feel like we all deserve to find the community that allows us to be ourselves.
Wow, that's beautiful. I feel that in my heart, like
Mm.
that feels so true. And I'm glad that it's you who's doing this because that does feel so true for you. I'm curious about like when you're saying I became me. I mean, I've always been me, right? I became me and I found the community. How do you find those communities where you can be seen and you can be exactly who you are and held in that way?
Well, I found them through a lot of trial and error. Maybe I
Amen.
recommend, maybe I
Amen.
don't. Some are better than others. I think I would get clear on your values first and foremost. I think if you do just one thing, it'd be that. And why that matters is that will be your guiding light. That will help you determine what are the values of this community, right? There's a lot of places to find community. We'll dive into what the Nova is. I'd love to have you if your values align with ours. But there's a lot of places you can find them on Eventbrite. I mean, I feel like communities are popping up everywhere in my world. They're on Facebook, they're on Circle, they're on all events, they're on event, there's community everywhere. There's chamber communities, there's all kinds of things. And so what I like to do is just values first. And then as you can do a simple Google search, local communities that stand for spirituality, local communities that represent, holistic growth, local communities that stand for, using my authentic voice, whatever it is that you care about, if you're just like professional networking, but then start to dive into that. I like to try them out. So what I did last year when I was looking to emerge back into the real world after COVID was I tried out a bunch. So I did a search. I kind of made a Google Doc. I love Google Docs. And I made a list of the virtual and local communities that were options. And then I attended each one of them about 3 times that felt like they could be aligned for me. And then I chose like 3 to participate in. So that was my formula.
I love hearing this, and I love how you went about it. And Jill is laughing, I know, because she knows that is some Stacè stuff. I'm all about the Google Docs. Let's have a Google Sheet. Let's organize. Let's plan. That's beautiful.
No,
And
she's
I hear
just
you
all about
saying
organization. And then you'll box
all about it.
like, this one felt here and it will be organized neatly. And you're like, yeah, compart. Yeah. My
We're
question
destined to
that's
be
coming
friends.
up when y'all need to
And
talk.
literally before we jump in, and I don't want to spend too long on spreadsheets, although we could probably do an entire episode on it. So I have a podcast called Inner Rebel, and my podcast co-host does not like them. And literally the first thing that she said on our podcast in our intro episode was like, there is something that everybody needs to know about Melissa Bauknight. And I was like, oh shit, what's she going to tell? Like, what deep dark secret? And she was like, she loves spreadsheets. I was like, that's the secret we're going with first.
Here,
So
this is it.
Love it.
This is it.
I mean,
This is it.
listen,
Love it.
I love a good organized spreadsheet as well. I can get down with the spreadsheets. However, I don't know that I would have went the route of like, here are all of my options for community. Maybe I should do that. It's kind of good.
Girl, try
because
it.
Well, I'm an
Yeah,
investigator in human design. That's me. I'm researching.
there we have
it. There
Uh-huh.
it is. Yeah. It's like, let's find all the options, narrow it down, and then choose a few. It's very practical.
Makes
I love
sense.
that. I'm generator, so it's all feeling based, right? I'm like, yes, no, yes, no.
Mhm.
And I'm curious though about this because how safety is such an important piece and something that I have been really, 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 really diving into. And I know Stacè is too, is just like, I'm holding my energy really closely to who I give it out to, who comes in, the exchange. And because there are so many communities out there now, because there are so many people, I think, which celebration, there's such an awakening happening in
Mhm.
our universe and collective. Like, how do you hold your discernment, hold your sovereignty when you have such a deep desire to be in connection and be in community? Because I think maybe you could be out there listening, like, yeah, I've had that. I could want something so deeply, and then it fogs my like discernment or sovereignty of being in it and how it's actually feeling. If that's making, is that land like how I'm,
Mhm. Like, how
yeah.
do you discern if it feels safe?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you have to feel really unsafe to know what it feels to be safe.
Mm.
I think that, now I know, like I have a deep knowing when I walk into a room or when I sit down at a table or when I'm with an individual, because there's the pulse of the room. There's the pulse of the, like if you're at a table, there's like all these like subsectors of energy that's happening all around you. And then there's like whatever one-on-one interaction. So there's like a lot of energies that are at play in a room. I look at like, how is the facilitator, like, what are they saying and who are they being? Because we can say a lot of things. Like, it's one thing for me to be like, the Nova holds safe spaces, right? And then that could be total bullshit. So I think when we look at how is the container held, I know I learned a lot from Tracy in how she holds her Ishtara containers. And then I've gone on to work with several very trauma-informed facilitators, and there's just a difference, right? There's a difference in the way, like there's usually agreements of how we be together. There's a way in which we honor each other's emotional experience. So there might be like a pause or a witnessing, some reflection, some very intentional I see yous is usually a part of the experience. And I feel like there's a like a transparency and a vulnerability that's held by the facilitator that allows the room to just kind of like, right? Like when I lead, I have, I'm always prepared, obviously, because I love spreadsheets, but I also leave room for my emotions, my vulnerability, for saying what's real, for not trying to be perfect. And I have somebody that supports me in the room that is really great at feeling into the space and pausing the room or acknowledging people. So I don't do it alone ever, because that's a lot for me. So those are some of the things that I think are critical. And if you've never felt any of those things, then you probably know what it feels like to feel like shit in your body and to be in a room where you're like, give me out, give me out, give me out, give me out, give me out. And so that's a good indicator of what you don't want, what doesn't feel safe for your body.
That's a whole word. Wow. Oh, I'm reflecting on the conversations, and I know Jill has these too, but the conversations we have with women where they may not have that language, but that's what they're saying. Like,
Yes.
I just
Yeah.
don't feel safe. I don't feel seen. I don't feel valued. Like maybe they have the language, but maybe they don't. And I like hearing what you're saying around how you create the safety. And this is something that I think people are really curious about. It's like, great, you create the safety, but then a lot of times they hang their hat on you doing all the work. And we know from being in community, it's a shared responsibility. You can't make me feel safe. I get to choose to feel safe. You get to provide the environment. But what are the things that we can do to participate in our own safety making in communities?
I really encourage people to start where they are. So, for example, we had an event the other night. I'm calling them Nova boards. They were action boards, which is like a more being based vision board. So we did a whole experience the other night, and it was in person, and I invited people to share their boards at the end. And I remembered being the person that was like, don't call on me, like ducking under the table, probably crawling out of the room to avoid being put in front of the room. Like that's who I was. And so I speak to that, right? Like I'm like, okay, this might not be where you're at in your journey. Coming up in front of this room might feel like it used to feel to me like you want to die and avoid it at all costs. So let's start where we are. How do we invite you to share this? I would, if you can turn to the person next to you and that feels safe for you right now, then like turn to her, because they've been establishing a relationship through the whole night. If that feels edgy for you, then do you have somebody at home that you can share with that feels comfortable for you? Do you have a friend that will witness you? Because this is like, we did it wasn't just like put some shit on a board and make it look pretty. It was a vulnerable deep dive into self to create your world from that place. And so it's vulnerable, right? That's not comfortable for people. So I really gave them just some choices of like, and what I didn't say, but what I would expect is that you're kind of feeling each choice in your body, whether you realize you are or not, whether you're consciously doing that is like, oh yeah, I could definitely tell my partner, like that feels good. Or like, okay, I'm a yes to turn into this person and sharing with them, but I'm a hell no to the front of this room. So I like to give people some choices to just kind of give them an idea of like, here are different ways that you could do this task that would still have you start to feel seen and use your voice. So that's just an example. So I say, I like to just look at bite-size incremental steps and start where you are, but like push it a little, right? Like you might just feel safe maybe reading something into your mirror, but maybe you can phone a friend instead. So I like to just like invite you to maybe take one little step further than what you think you can do. And then your body's like, okay, I didn't die. That's okay. We can do more. Right. So we're just like baby stepping our way to speaking in front of thousands. Big jump there. Big
Love
jump.
it.
Yeah.
I think choices are that's the biggest thing I think that I'm hearing from you in this is maybe, you know, some women maybe haven't been afforded an opportunity to even have a choice. And that could feel like a whole thing. Like, hold up, I have A, B, or C. It's not like option A.
That's such a
And
good
Mhm.
point.
I think it's a real big deal and yeah, applauding you and uprighting you and the way in which you led that group and obviously will lead many other groups if any of you out there are finding yourself getting to go to one of these amazing Nova events. Because I think choice is it's so crucial and what's coming in and obviously Melissa, you've made lots of choices in your path, right? And so
Hmm.
this choice led to this choice led to this over a decade ago. You made the choice, like, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna see my stuff. This
Mhm.
shit's uncomfortable. But in this moment, today, might change tomorrow, y'all. Maybe it'll change for part two. What is one choice that just really comes into your heart right now that you are like, I'm so grateful for that one that led me to be here, to be able to be in front of thousands of women, not
Yeah.
hiding under a desk, you know?
Yeah. Mm. I've always taken to this moment. It was a choice to stand up and share in a room in Landmark. So I did Landmark Worldwide is where I started my inner growth journey, and I hid in the room in the bigger groups. I mean, I had to go to the front of I feel like I didn't have a choice. I went to the front of the room for something because my friends volunteered me, and that was fine. But I didn't want to do that. But on my own will, I really hid, and I barely felt safe enough to turn to the person next to me. Honestly, I was so nervous. I was like, what are we doing talking about our feelings to strangers? This is so wild, and I feel deeply uncomfortable. And so the further along I went in that curriculum, I was in a room of probably 30 people at that point in their self-expression and leadership program. And I stood up and I shared who knows what. But I made a choice to stand up, and I made a choice to share in this group. And I made a choice. I know you often ask, like, what does still mean to you? And I made the choice to feel the fear and still stand up. And I was acknowledged by the facilitator who I just deeply respected. And she took a moment and she saw me in a way that I had never been seen before. And she called it out in front of the room and she said, I need to take a pause. I don't actually know what her real words were, but this is what it felt like for me. I want to pause the room and I want you to pay attention to her presence, to how she speaks, to the way in which she commands a room, to she said all these things. And I was like, wow, me? And it was the first time that I had felt seen that way. And so from there, obviously a lot has transpired where I've chosen to feel the fear and show up anyway, feel the desire to shrink back and still be visible, and the desire to mask and still show up in my vulnerability. And that's been happening over a decade. And now I would love to speak in front of thousands of people. Former me would have thought that was totally bananas and out of the realm of possibility. But that choice to stand up in that room, and then the way in which that facilitator chose to acknowledge me, was a game changer for my life.
Mm.
God bless Linda.
Wow.
Mm,
I That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing it. And I think it's going to inspire so many people because we all have those choice points, right? And a lot of times we do what is habitual. I don't do that. I don't speak in front of people, or I don't connect with new people, or whatever it is. That choice point, had it not happened, and had you not had the experience of being mirrored and reflected in the way that you had, I mean, that could have changed everything. Who knows what you might be doing at this moment? And so you made me think about the whole sister wound thing and saying, in the face of being afraid, in the face of being like, I want to like crawl out of here, I still made the choice for myself. I made the choice to move myself forward. And I'm thinking of so many women who carry the sister wound. Like, how do you get the courage to make the choice? Like, despite these wounds, I'm still going to show up and be in community. That feels so freaking
yeah.
hard.
It's so
No,
hard. That's my first thought.
Girl,
I
that's
was
a big
like,
one.
That's hard. Like, where does that come from? That courage, that, I don't know. Is it just the desire, the sheer desire? Like, I desire to be held, to be seen, to be witnessed, to be in community. I desire to come forward. Is it the desire that takes over? I'm not saying I have the answer. I know. I'm just curious. Like, what was it for you in that moment
mm,
to step in and say, I'm still going to do it?
such a good question. And I don't know if I remember that moment, but I have those moments like multiple times a day now. I think,
Yeah.
I often joke that like I don't even know what a comfort zone is anymore because I'm just so out of it all the time in my life. Um, how do you choose to do it anyway? You recall a time where it worked. I think that we need proof to feel like this could go a different direction. I sometimes like to borrow proof from other people. So maybe you have had every woman relationship has been total shit for you. And you're like, yeah, right. There's no way women are this great. I would like to stand as proof that there might be an alternative way to be in relationship with women. Because we all have the sister wound. I've had horrible shit happen with women. And
Mm-hmm.
it really made me want to, I've had really terrible things that made me want to crawl back into my shell and be like, no, you are not safe to show up. But I found the people that didn't respond to me that way, didn't treat me that way. And I've realized that it's always somebody else's shit that's like they're projecting onto you, right? It's you're triggering their mom, they're like horrible sister, like whatever that experience is. Sometimes you can trigger that
Mm-hmm.
person, that relationship that they've had, and then it gets put on to you. So often it's projection. I know that's a very generalized statement, but I'd say find somebody that you haven't had a bad experience with and try to recall like what happened, how that went. Look at other people who are having different kinds of experiences and maybe talk to them. I call them, these are not my terms, but like vision holders or expanders. So find those people that have the types of relationships that you want and you can see it's at least possible. So I think belief that it's possible to have a different outcome is really everything. Because if we don't have any hope or we don't have any belief, then we're not going to even try. So I don't think that directly answered your question, but I do think that
Oh, it's good.
is possible. Like belief in a different possibility makes you continue to show up. And then the more proof you get, the more you're like, okay, I'm getting all this proof that this could work. I'm getting more proof and like, look at what happens. And so over time, these things just happen so gradually over time. But the belief in the proof is really key.
I was getting the visual of like when you
Wow.
cut, you get a cut on your skin. And sometimes if it's a deeper cut, it's going to take a little longer for you to heal it. So it's like, let all this proof like be the tincture for the wound.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on my heart to also call this out of like, look, y'all, it's not going to be easy because if you have a desire to have sisters and have that relationship, it will require work and you showing up and you will be triggered point blank. Or maybe if you just don't want to, I imagine if you're here listening to us, you probably are interested in those deeper level sisterhoods, those deeper level of group connections. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, sure, you can blanket and skate through and like, cool, be on this level playing field. But I think that's also an important one. And I know, and it sounds like that is what you are creating in Nova is like this deeper level connection to be able to have the safety to then look at, I mean, God, Stacè and I have had so many conversations. I'm like, girl, I'm sweating woo, child. And I got to
Mhm.
bring this one forward because I don't desire to be in this energy, or I'm creating a story or whatever. And I think that it does require all this proof, to your point, Melissa, of like, let's heal that wound. Then you got you got your legs under you to then be able to find it within you to be like, this didn't feel good or land good in my body,
Yeah.
or to bring it up in the group, like say there's a group thing. And so I think there's so much in this that we can begin to uncover, and maybe
Yeah.
we get to roll this into part 2, because I have some questions around like trusting yourself to be able to bring that up, and like
So big.
Mhm.
So
all of
big.
these things.
Self-trust. We will lead with self. Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, thank
Yeah.
you all for tuning into this part 1. I know you pulled some nuggets, all of Melissa's info on how to reach out to her and all the things, and all about Nova. If you would love to learn more, you can find it all below. It's all in the show notes, and we'll be right back here, same place, same time, 11:11 next Wednesday for part 2. Thank you, Melissa, for being
Thank you,
here.
Melissa.
Thank you so much.
See you next week.
Bye.